My crazy mother-in-law tried to sabotage my food at the baby shower because she was upset that I had the baby the same month we got married. So let me just say, Mill and I have a bad relationship. We never had a good relationship from the beginning because Mill was rude to me from the start. Now I know you're probably thinking that's because she's overprotective of her son. Well, no. She's like that because she doesn't like me being a good wife to her son. My husband Rick had a very difficult childhood, and Mill was a woman who never believed in marriage, so she often dated random men. Even though she did get married twice, both marriages ended in complete failure. Rick is the firstborn of her first marriage, and he told me that his parents were very unhappy together and sometimes even got into physical fights. Rick unfortunately witnessed it all. Miller has always been an alcoholic, so she would sometimes drink for hours and forget to feed Rick. His biological father was no better. As a result, Rick was forced to take care of himself at a very young age. When his father left his mother, Miller started using drugs, so Rick had to look after her to prevent her from dying on the streets. When it was time for him to go to university, he had enough of my Miller, so he immediately moved into a dormitory to start a new life. Miller tried to hit him with the fact that he had abandoned her and forced him to give her part of his monthly salary from his part-time job. Rick felt guilty towards his only remaining mother, so in his third year of university, he always fulfilled her requests. Mir married again and had a daughter, Susan. Rick knew what kind of mother she would be, so he always treated his stepsister with respect. It is impressive to see how close Rick and Susan are even today. After Mir remarried, she stopped asking him for help with everything because she had a husband to take care of her needs and was busy raising Susan. Rick met me when he took his first job with our company. I was a year older than him and a senior at work. I must say that from the moment we first met, I noticed how charming he was, but as a professional, I never thought about crossing the line. 8 months later, Rick finally admitted that he had always had a crush on me, and we finally decided to go on our first date. When we knew that this was what we wanted and were serious about each other, we disclosed our relationship to human resources. Fortunately, our company has no strict policy against dating coworkers as long as it is reported in advance. Rick has always told me that I make him a better person. I don't know if that's true, but I must admit that since I've been in his life, I've started to notice how much control his mother has over his life. She won't let any opportunity go by to anger him and try to portray herself as an innocent victim. Whenever she and Rick have a fight, she belittles him and says he is just like his father. This hurts Rick because his father abandoned them, and it is painful for him to relive the past. But when I came into his life, I encouraged them to keep a healthy distance so that she would not have too much influence on him. Since we started dating, I have noticed positive changes in Rick. He now has a better line on MY. Rick is the type of person who likes to brag about his partner, and although it sometimes embarrasses me, I really like the fact that he appreciates me so much. Whenever Rick talks to MY, he tells her how much he enjoys being with me and how I take care of him. I think that's why MY initially started resenting me, because Rick always told her how wonderful his life had become with me in it, and that he had never been happier. Then I would try to convince him that she had sacrificed a lot for him, but Rick would retort that it was he who had sacrificed his childhood, taking care of her while she drank and took drugs. Mill hated hearing this because according to her the past should stay in the past, and then blamed Rick for bringing it up one night when Rick was living with me. M showed up at our doorstep in the middle of the night, crying that she could no longer live with her husband. It turned out that Mill had cheated on her husband with a complete stranger in a bar. When the stranger found out that she was married, he immediately found Mill's husband through Facebook and sent him a message apologizing for having sex with his wife. Understandably, her husband was furious and confronted her about it, but she refused to apologize, saying that it was just a one-time mistake and that if he was a real man, he should forgive her and try to fight for their relationship. Fortunately, her husband was no longer at her mercy and quickly threw her out. That's why she appeared on our doorstep, asking Rick for help. Rick told her that it was all her fault and that she needed to apologize to her husband immediately, but Mill kept refusing, saying that she didn't need a man like him and that she had Rick to take care of me. I rolled my eyes when I heard this, because it was her usual excuse. She would mess things up and then expect her son to clean up after her, but this time was different. Live with us, so I told him privately that his mother couldn't stay with us for long and that she needed to find her own place, because I couldn't stand her drama. Thank God, Rick agreed, and we let her stay for a week. During that time, Millie did nothing at home. She left dirty dishes on the counter or in the sink, and dirty clothes on the floor in the bedroom, expecting me to clean up after her. She demanded that I cook her favorite meals for her, only if I was too tired to cook. She would cook. She told me what a terrible partner I was for ordering takeout, that her son deserved better, and I would keep quiet because it was the first time she was staying with us and I tried to act mature. Once, I caught her smoking in our kitchen because she left the butt on the floor for me to clean up. Living with her was a nightmare, and after a week, I discussed with Rick about getting her to leave. He asked her to sit down and calmly talk to her about it, but heard Miller explode in anger. She started saying how he, as her mother, should take care of her until she no longer needed it. She continued saying that she had the right to stay with us, and that he was disrespecting her by asking her to leave. Hearing her words, I laughed at her and told her she was wrong. This is our place. Rick and I both paid for it, so she has no right to be here without my permission. I went on to tell her that we have been very welcoming for a week, but she hasn't done anything to make it easier for us, and it's time for her to give us some privacy. Rick agreed with me and added that she should try apologizing to her husband or move in with her sister. At this point, Mill exploded, yelling at Rick and telling him how dare I talk to her like that. It's none of my business, and I should shut up. I'm not the kind of anyone, so I calmly told her that her time of trying to control and manipulate everyone was over, that we didn't like her bringing her drama to our place, and that she needed to leave immediately. When she heard this, her eyes widened in shock. But Rick interjected that she should never speak to me like that again, because I was his equal partner and he didn't want anyone to speak to me like that. When I asked Tucker to take care of her for a whole week, he told her how lucky he was to have me in his life and that I had taken care of him more than she had in her whole life. Mir didn't like hearing this and started shouting back, saying that she had done the best thing for him and that he should be grateful to her, that she should be allowed to live with us. But Rick wasn't in the mood to hear anymore, and eventually she had to pack her bags and leave the next day. We later learned that she went to live with Susan, and this made our relationship even worse, but I never regretted standing up to her. I think that's why she's always competed with me and continues to send me messages. When Rick and I got married, she warned him that he would regret marrying a woman like me and that he needed a more domestic wife who could take care of his house. I laughed when I heard her sarcasm, because she herself was far from being a domestic wife. She did not attend our wedding and protested, but honestly, no one cared, and we all had the best time of our lives. Now back to the matter at hand. I am 3 months pregnant. Rick and I have not told anyone because I had a miscarriage before my second pregnancy, and this pregnancy took a long time, so we are being extra careful and don't want to alert people beforehand. Now that we are out of the danger zone, we thought we should notify our loved ones. We wanted to surprise everyone, so we gathered everyone for a private party at our house. Rick wanted his mother to be there, and I agreed because no matter what our relationship is, I want our child to be loved by everyone. When people started arriving, they noticed my belly, took a moment to digest it, then exclaimed with joy. Everyone was happy for us and excitedly asked if we had thought of a name for the baby. The doorbell rang and Mir arrived. I was shocked to see her with a new man on the arm. I looked at Rick, who was equally shocked. Then she introduced everyone to her fiancé, and she was getting married in a few months. I opened my mouth wide, unable to believe that she had not informed us that she was going to have a new partner and had come to our home to announce the news. I was angry and looked at Rick, who was the same. But we didn't want to spoil the moment, so we politely congratulated her, and then I went over to shake her hand and introduce myself to her new fiancé. Mir suddenly noticed my belly. I watched her look back and forth between Rick and me, her smile growing stiff. She asked me loudly and angrily if I was pregnant, and I nodded. Everyone around us started exclaiming how wonderful the news was. I glanced at Mir and she blushed. She looked at Rick and asked him why he hadn't told her before, but Rick joked that she hadn't told us she had a fiancé either. Mir continued, saying that as his mother, she needed to be the first to know about her future grandchild. I interrupted and calmly explained to her that we didn't want to spread the news prematurely until we were sure there were no potential risks. I reminded her that our last miscarriage had taught us to be cautious and that we had called everyone to the house today to celebrate the news together, but Mir was not satisfied. She told me that she would be getting married in 6 months and that would be the time I gave birth. I told her that she should be happy that she would be having a grandchild in the same month as her wedding, but Mir looked angry. She retorted that she was too young to be a grandmother and that she wished we had given her advance notice, as she would now have to hurry up the wedding process because she didn't want to be called grandma on her wedding day. Her reasoning sounded ridiculous, and I couldn't help rolling my eyes at her misplaced priorities. I calmly reminded her that we should be focusing on celebrating the new changes coming into our lives, the upcoming wedding and the soon-to-be-born child, rather than worrying about what other people would say. But Mir, like a child, decided to blatantly ignore me as if I didn't exist and walked away to chat with other guests. I shrugged my shoulders, because I was already familiar with her immaturity, and her lack of maturity was no longer surprising to me. Rick and I decided to let it go and got busy chatting with our friends. Susan arrived, greeted us warmly, and congratulated us on the pregnancy. Rick asked her if she knew their mother was engaged again, but she looked just as surprised as we did and told him she had never told her anything about a new man. They shouldn't be surprised at her, she joked, because apparently Mir would change her man like the weather. Just like the weather, it was time for lunch. I got up to serve the food, but Rick and my parents told me to sit still and not even move a finger, saying they would serve everyone. My Mill must have overheard their conversation and probably wanted to look good in front of everyone or to please her new fiancé, because she interjected that she would help me serve the food so I wouldn't have to move a finger. I smiled politely, not knowing how to react, because just a minute ago she had blatantly ignored me, and now she was going to serve me food. She had never been friendly to me, so I couldn't imagine why she was suddenly being so friendly. When we were both seated at the table and ready to eat, Mill came over and handed me a plate, loudly announcing that she had chosen more vegetables than meat so that her future grandchildren would be strong and healthy. I don't mind eating vegetables because she herself and everyone around her prefers a vegetarian diet, and the Oxford English Dictionary, OED, and strange sayings she takes care of very well, but I know her better. And this is completely out of character for her. She brought me a plate of food, and I looked at the food suspiciously, wondering if she had done something to my food, but it looked completely normal. Mir served her plate and then went back to the kitchen to get herself a kitchen, which is quite normal for her. The people around her didn't know, and I secretly switched the plates, because she also brought a lot of vegetables, hoping she wouldn't notice. I thought no one had noticed me, but I noticed her fiancé sitting next to her watching me, but he didn't say anything, so I prayed that he wouldn't tell her anything either before she came back. I started to wolf down my food so she wouldn't suspect anything. I watched her as she sat next to me, and then she asked me if I'd told her I liked it, and then she told me I should try the salad she'd prepared for me, because she obviously knew that Mum should eat more salad. I nodded and continued to drink my milk, then took a bite of her food, chewed slowly, and then spat it out loudly in front of everyone. I opened my eyes wide in shock as I saw her looking closely at the plate. When the others asked her if everything was okay, she gave me her plate, and I used her drink, but continued coughing, so she excused herself to go to the bathroom. I immediately whispered to Rick that we needed to talk, because I didn't want to make a fool of myself in front of everyone. I was afraid that she intended to poison me in my food. I told him what had happened. When I recounted the whole thing to him, he looked at me in disbelief and then asked if I was sure. I nodded and told him that I didn't know what she had mixed into the food, but that I did switch her plate with mine, and that he could ask his mother's fiancé if he wanted to. Rick assured me that he would take care of it. I tried to stop him, saying that we could talk to his mother later, but he wouldn't agree. He immediately stormed into the house, and I saw him talking to his mother's fiancé. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Rick was clearly furious. His mother returned from the bathroom, confused and worried, and tried to play it down, but Rick interrupted her in a firm, calm voice and asked if she had tampered with my wife's food. The question hung in the air, and everyone at the table fell silent, sensing the tension. Mir stammered a denial of any wrongdoing and played the innocent, claiming she had only wanted to make sure I had a healthy meal for the baby. Rick was not buying it and loudly warned her that if she did not confess immediately, then he would call the police. Everyone looked at them confused because no one knew that I had switched the plates and she had obviously eaten from the plate she had given me. Mill tried to get out of it by saying that she had done nothing and that it was probably all in our minds, but I walked into the room and told everyone what had happened. My mother gasped in shock and contempt, asking if I was okay. I nodded and turned my head towards Mir, who looked furious that she had been caught red-handed and everyone was staring at her, judging her for what she had done. She finally admitted that she had simply put a lot of salt in my salad as a harmless prank. I opened my eyes wide in shock and asked her why she would do such a thing. Mir tried to justify herself, saying that the salt wasn't going to kill me or anything. I would probably have thrown up too, so it wasn't a big deal, and I hadn't even had time to react to her callous attitude. Rick looked like he had lost his mind and started yelling at her, saying she was crazy to do such a thing and that she should be reported. Mir laughed and said that the whole thing had been blown out of proportion and that salt was not lethal. She went on to say that, as a new mother, I should be used to vomiting, so the prank was obviously no big deal. My mother has never been disrespectful before, said Mir, walking up to her angrily. How dare you joke about my daughter's health, especially at such a special time? You should be ashamed of yourself. How dare you endanger the health of your grandchildren? You've gone too far. I never want to see you near my daughter again. Rick chimed in, too, saying what she had done was crazy and her behavior was unacceptable, and he demanded that she and her fiancé leave immediately. Mir realized the gravity of the situation and tried to downplay her actions, insisting it was just a joke, but no one was backing her up. The tension was palpable, and Rick escorted his mother out of the room while I remained standing, digesting what had just happened. Our friends and family came up to me to show their support. Everyone was upset with Mir and her immature actions. Rick soon returned to apologize to everyone and assure us that we should continue the celebration no matter how caustic his mother was, because he was a first-time dad and the mood had undoubtedly shifted, but our loved ones were still there for us, offering their understanding. From then on, Rick and I decided that we could not let our child come anywhere near his mother. What she had done was a clear indication that she was inherently flawed, and we could not risk endangering my life by letting her life disrupt ours for the sake of our child's life. If we cut ties with her, Update 1, thanks everyone for your support and comments, and for asking us over the past 4 days why we feel guilty after what she did. This is because Rick has never had a healthy relationship with his parents. He and his mom obviously have a bad relationship, but it is not easy for a child to cut ties with his or her parents, no matter how difficult they are to get along with. However, given that our child's health is now at stake, Rick seems to have made up his mind. I just don't want him to regret it, which is why I want to hear everyone's unbiased opinions. He decided to talk to her alone, because I don't have the energy to face her again. I hope everything goes well, and I will let you know as soon as possible. I'll also give an update. It's been a month since the last update. Unfortunately, things haven't gone well with our plan. First, Rick went to talk to her about our decision, and it resulted in a big fight, which was to be expected, but after that, knowing that we didn't want her in our lives, she still kept showing up uninvited, mostly on weekdays, knowing that Rick would be at the office and I would be home alone. Fortunately, we had already installed a camera, so I never opened the door to her. She doesn't do anything crazy, just sends chocolates or flowers. I never touch them because I suffer from paranoia and fear what she has done to them. Rick always throws them straight in the bin as soon as he gets home. This constant anxiety is unsettling and affecting my mental health. We hope she will eventually give up as she can't use our phone and we won't open the door for her. My parents have been worried about me since this happened, and my mother comes over to keep me company as much as she can. For now, I am doing my best to focus on this journey of becoming a mother and to stay as healthy as possible for the sake of my child. Update 3. Hello everyone. Thank you for your continued support over the past few months. I apologize for not updating sooner. I have been very busy recently, but there is one very important update. I remember writing that my mirror would continue to show up at our place, hoping to talk to me. A few weeks ago, after repeated attempts to contact her, she left a letter in the mailbox. I hesitated to open the letter, half expecting some manipulative request or guilt trip. To my surprise, the letter was more like a formal apology. Mir expressed regret for her past actions, acknowledged the harm she had caused, and promised to respect our decision to give us the space we need and not contact us again until we were ready. I was shocked when I read the letter, and when Rick came, I asked him to double-check that it was really his mother's handwriting, because this was such a surprise. As it turned out, she is now married, which happened much faster than we thought. So she probably wants to start over, which I appreciate, and I also want to believe her sincerity deep down. However, for our safety, we will continue to distance ourselves from her for the time being. Rick and I are now focusing on preparing for the arrival of our child and hope for a calm, stress-free environment.